Today, we're going to begin our tour of the Duwamish River from its historic source on Mount Rainier. The farthest reaching branch of the historic Duwamish River watershed originates from ice caves at the base of Mount Rainier's Emmons Glacier, the United States' largest glacier, at an elevation of about 5,000 feet. This is the origin of the White River, which was later severed from and redirected away from the Duwamish watershed. The White River flows from the ice caves buried under the rock debris from a 1963 avalanche that now covers the lower portion of the glacier. It cascades down Mount Rainier to the junction with the Greenwater River in the small town of Greenwater. The Greenwater River originates at Natchez Pass, where the colonists' first wagon trains crossed the Cascade Range. The river then continues to flow west past Muckleshoot Prairie to the current city of Auburn, where it was diverted south, away from the farmland that once lined the river's floodplains, by early settler farmers armed with dynamite who blasted a new path for the river. It now flows down the narrow Stuck Valley to the Puyallup River and into Puget Sound at Commencement Bay, 10 miles away. Following the White River's historic path through the now dry city of Auburn, we come to its historic junction with the Green River, which once flowed into the White here as one of several river branches comprising the original watershed. Today, the Green River is the only surviving branch feeding the Duwamish. On its course north towards Seattle, the river passes through the original settlement of White River on its way to its historic confluence with another lost branch of the watershed. The Black River was diverted in the early 1900s when a ship canal was cut into the large lake that used to drain to the Duwamish River through the Black. Lake Washington now flows through the new ship canal into Puget Sound 15 miles north, which caused the Black River to dry up completely. The only water that enters the Duwamish here today comes from a few remaining wetlands and the flow from the Renton sewage treatment plant. Below this point, the river is called the Duwamish. 5 miles further on, we meet the beginning of a constructed canal that replaced the river's original meanders. Built to accommodate industrial expansion and completed in 1920, the canal runs past the historic neighborhood of South Park and is lined with industry. The Boeing Airplane Company's Plant 2 can be seen in the foreground across from South Park. Across the river, the industrial residential fence line community of Georgetown is where Seattle's first white settlers claimed lands on the banks of the river, in the midst of dozens of the Duwamish tribe's longhouses, in the heart of their traditional homelands. Only one original river bend remains on the lower Duwamish River, at the historic Duwamish village of Uliquat. Here, the discovery of a prehistoric tribal village in the 1970s stopped the Port of Seattle's bulldozers from filling in the river's last bend in order to build one more marine terminal. This used to be the mouth of the river, opening up onto open water and tide flats. All of the land downriver of Uliquat is constructed land built for shipping and industry. The island in the center of the historic estuary is Harbor Island, which was the largest man-made island in the world at the time it was built. On the far side of Harbor Island, the Duwamish enters Elliott Bay in Puget Sound on the downtown Seattle waterfront. In all, the changes to the Duwamish River watershed eliminated the White, Cedar, and Black rivers, as well as Lake Sammamish and Lake Washington from the watershed, a 75% reduction in flow and area in a short 20 years. In addition, the lower 12 miles of the river was straightened and deepened into a 5-mile industrial shipping canal. We're now going to travel up that 5-mile waterway with Duwamish tribal member James Rasmussen, who serves as the Superfund manager for the Duwamish River Cleanup Coalition.
So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Rasmussen. I'm the Superfund manager for the Duwamish River Cleanup Coalition, and we are on the Duwamish River right now. And the one thing we usually try to make sure people do understand is that this is not the way the river used to be. I'm Duwamish. I'm a Duwamish person. I'm a part of the tribe. We've been here for over 10,000 years. And in 100 years or a little more, this vast change has happened. And that's how we start this tour. So our next stop here is a very important place. Today it's known as Ha'apu's Park, which is the native name for the park. It used to be known as Terminal 107. This whole area here is the last stretch of the original river. And that's why it is important, because it's habitat that's been saved, not habitat that's been created. The importance about the habitat is that we already know that as far as recovering salmon, this is one of the most important habitat sites. Fry come here as they're coming out the river, or little salmon, and they feed here because they're getting used to getting to salt water, and they need to feed so they can get strong, so they can get out into the sound and then out into the ocean. And so that becomes a real important place. As salmon are returning, they feed here because this is where they're making the transition. Once they transition to fresh water, they don't eat anymore. They're going to go spawn. And so this place is important for those reasons. But the reason that it's still here is because as they were working on this site, this is already an active archaeological site. Port came in and started bulldozing houses, kind of not paying attention to anything that they were bulldozing up. Our tribal office was notified something's going on, you got to get down there. So we did. We realized what was going on. We could see the shell midden coming up out of the ground, and immediately called the Corps of Engineers and the University of Washington Archaeological Department, and they came out. But in the meantime, this is the way the story goes. Our tribal chairperson, Cecile Hansen, stood in front of bulldozers to stop the action that was going on. That is important, because the only way this site was going to be saved was my ancestors reaching up out of the ground saying, no, not here. And that's why we stop here, to make sure that you understand we're not just talking about habitat, recreation, and those current type of things, but we're talking about a ton of history. Right across the street from here is the Duwamish Longhouse and Cultural Center. And so we do tours that talk about the environmental importance here, as well as the cultural importance here, because we're talking about layers of history. Right now we're at the Lafarge Cement Company, but Lafarge is also a part of the remedy of this site, and this is important. It's a big crane that we see coming out here. It's a green crane that allows Lafarge to take the contaminated sediments that are coming out of this river and put them into rail cars. So we don't have several steps. We have one step where it comes out of the river into the barge. Then the next step is out of the barge into the rail car. Why that's important is the less you move contaminated sediment, the better it is. And Lafarge is one of the only sediment offloading places in Puget Sound. They've done this a long time, and they've done it on cleanup here. What's behind me right now is an operation called Seattle Iron and Metals. You'll see the big thing that looks like it's out of Mad Max right over here. That's an all-purpose grader. In other words, you could put a school bus into that thing and it'll come out in little pieces. Okay? That grader should be enclosed so we don't have all of the little pieces that wind up all over and in the neighborhood here. This is right next to Georgetown. Behind me is the Boeing Plant 2 cleanup. Sediments in the river here for almost a mile down the river, all the way over to the other side of the 14th Avenue Street Bridge, were contaminated. And this is Boeing's largest industrial facility on the river. In World War II, this was one of the largest buildings in the United States. They built B-17 bombers. So the important part about it is the way they used to clean the plant. The plant actually came out over the river, and this is a plant that ran 24 hours, very active plant. And people would come through and sweep the plant, and what they did was sweep it into holes over the river in the floor, because in those days the solution to pollution is dilution. We know so much better today, but this site, all the way up the river on the other side, all the way down, has not just been cleaned up as an early action area on the river, but habitat has been created as well. Behind me, you're going to see all kinds of habitat that's been recreated. Off-channel slip is created. Again, it gives an intertidal effect to what's going on. Again, feeding salmon. And this is one of the really important places as far as the cleanup of the river is concerned. Behind me, which is just across the river from what you were looking at with the Boeing Plant 2 cleanup, is Duwamish Waterway Park. And Duwamish Waterway Park is the real public access that's South Park, now on the other side. Georgetown on one side, South Park on the other side. This is their real public access to the river. This is a very used park. And as you can see, there's some fencing up there and that type of thing. It's being completely redone with community input and the plans from the community. So there's much more opportunity for play areas and that type of thing on the park. The other important part about this park is that this is where we hold the Duwamish River Festival. The Duwamish River Festival is one of our major outreaches, because what we do is bring together responsible parties, NGOs, everybody else. And we have a big festival, everybody gets a booth, and the people directly can talk to EPA, Department of Ecology, and University of Washington, as well as responsible parties on the river, and that would be the City of Seattle, King County, Port of Seattle, and the Boeing Company. What's behind me right now is a business that used to be here, Malarkey Asphalt. Malarkey Asphalt was one of the largest recyclers of oil from the City of Seattle, from their cars and their trucks. They would come here because you use oil to make asphalt, and so that's what they were doing here. This place was also one of the most contaminated areas on the Duwamish River. And as the process moved along, and this is really important to understand, the original cleanup was only meant to be done to industrial levels, the lowest level of cleanup. The community got incensed because they live right across the street from this. And so with a lot of action going on, we as DRCC actually got some buses together. We went to a Port Commission meeting in SeaTac with about several busloads of community members, and they all testified. It made a difference. The next meeting that the Port Commission had was actually in South Park. We didn't know what they were going to say, but we were hopeful, but we didn't know if they just wanted to come in to the South Park area and just say, sorry, we're doing it the same way. What the Port Commission actually did was in that meeting, directed their staff to put together a new cleanup plan to clean it up to the highest level. This is a success story for the community, that their voice was heard. And by the way, the habitat site that's being built on top of it, because it was cleaned up to the highest level, benefits the Port of Seattle as well, because they have responsibilities as far as what we call reclamation of the river beyond just the cleaning up of the river, but creating habitat, which is why you see the habitat that Boeing's created, as well as this habitat for the Port of Seattle. This is Ham Creek. Ham Creek is one of the restoration stories down here in South Park. And the first person that started working on this, his name was John Beal, B-E-A-L. John Beal is an important person to almost everybody who works on this. He actually was a Vietnam veteran, and he wasn't feeling really well. And so he went to the VA hospital, and they said, John, you only have less than a year to live. Your heart is shot. So John, you know, they gave him some nitroglycerin pills and said, good luck, you know, you feel pain, take the nitroglycerin pills, should be okay, but you're not gonna have very much longer to live. So John, instead of, I mean, when something like that happens to you, it's a life-changing event, obviously. But with John, what he started to do is he knew that this creek was just like in ditches on the side of the road. And so what did he start to do but pulling mattresses out, pulling washing machines out, because people would dump stuff on the side of the road. And eventually he started to really see that there was a potential and a reality of salmon that were coming up in an impossible situation, still reaching the creek, to the point where a lot of the work that's been done has been opening that creek back up in its natural form. And now we have the mouth of it here rather than coming out a storm drain someplace. We have all kinds of fish return that come to this place. This is an incredibly important story, not only because it relates to John, but it relates to all the people that he influenced. We're all on his shoulders. And John was really the start of it all. Well before this was a Superfund site, he was raising the alarm. Behind me right now is the end of our tour, and this is what we call the turning basin. In other words, a wide place in the river, so if a ship was coming up this way, it has a place to turn around. That's what the turning basin is for. But in the old days, this place was a dumping ground. You'd find school buses, ferries, all kinds of boats just got dumped down here. And over time, and this all happened previous to the Superfund site, this area started to get cleaned up. And what we find now is the habitat here all along the river. This is what we're looking for. This is why this river is important, because the river is alive. And that's an important story that we tell here. It isn't just the salmon, it isn't just the trees or the intertidal habitat, it's all one thing. And that includes the community that lives around it and cares for it as well. And I hope through this little film that we're doing and tour that we've done is that we give you some kind of an idea that this is your river too. We've taken action here and we've seen the changes that are being made. You also have an opportunity to make a difference. We have more variety of wildlife on this river today than in any other place in the city of Seattle. On the back of this river was the wealth of the city was born. Today, the leadership that they showed in building this, they have to show in cleaning it up. It is not just a river for industry. It is a river for community, and it is a river for wildlife. And we have to be able to balance those things now. We don't want to see the industries go out of business. We want to see them thrive, just as we wish to see the communities that live here thrive and being able to thrive in place, as well as we see the wildlife that we see thriving around us. And so thank you very much. In the way my people do it, I'll raise my hands to you like this. That means thank you, honor you, goodbye, everything you can think of as we raise our hands to you. Thank you very much.